Hello, love. I'm Ashley Miley, and this is the Sacred Intimacy Temple, a podcast exploring love, sex, and relationships as a sacred spiritual path. Each episode is a remembrance of sacred intimacy, first with yourself, and then with Source, your beloved, family, and community. Come home to the temple within. Let's begin. Hello, all. Welcome to the Sacred Intimacy Temple podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. So excited to have you here for the first episode. And this has really been a dream, a vision of sorts for a bit of time. And so it's so exciting to be sitting down here with you all and sharing these words, sharing this magic, this wisdom, and really inviting you into this moment with me. Really allowing yourself to show up in whatever way is true for you and being able to choose how you choose to be present in this moment. And this is the beginning of this podcast. This is the beginning of a journey, a long journey I foresee. And in that, I just really want to invite you to take a moment to just maybe put your hands on your body. Just notice your breath. Noticing how your body feels right now. What's alive in it? And as you feel into your breath, into your body, into presence with yourself in this moment, feel how it is this little tether of connection, of intimacy with yourself. And notice how simple that can be. As we start on this binge series, the series Coming Home to Intimacy is really about exploring what the path of sacred intimacy is and what the path of sacred intimacy is within sort of this construct, as I call it, of the Sacred Intimacy Temple. And for me, there's a lot of layers to that I realize. There's a lot of pieces to it. It is a lifelong journey. And in some ways, it's not so much a journey as much as it's a way of being. And it's a choice point at some point to really choose to, for lack of a better term, walk that path and initiate yourself in that way and step into that. And I think one of the most profound things I've realized thus far is that at the base of all of it, of all the different nuance and layers and initiations and pieces to it that I've seen that feel like the medicine that moves through me of what that means, it's all starting with and always foundationally from the connection with yourself. We can have a lot of pieces, and some of these things we'll explore deeper in this series, that disconnect us from the simplicity of that. And in the duality of that, and knowing what that feels like, and also having my own continuous journey with that. And I also want to bring this piece of the simplicity that it is to be connected to ourselves. It's not like you need to go on a eat, pray, love journey and do ayahuasca and do all this healing and whatever your ideas of what that means is and looks like. Yes, those things are beautiful and they deeply connect us more to ourselves. And yes, I am a person who stands for deep practice and what that can do. And the simplicity that coming back into connection with yourself can be something as simple as like putting your hands on your body or noticing your breath. Or even honestly, like noticing the resistance that you have to that invitation. That in itself is being in connection to yourself. And everything, all relationships, all connection is built first and foremost from that. And so before we dive a little bit deeper into the path of sacred intimacy, which is what this series is really going to be deeply exploring from some different angles, I want to give a little prefacing, if you will, of just like, where did this all come from? Maybe even in a way, a bit of connection of it for myself. Like, how do I connect to this work? How does this work move through me? Why? Those types of things. And I will say this sharing of my own is probably not my full-blown personal story by any means. There's a lot of layers to my own personal story of how I connect to this body of work. And I know for certain I will explore that in depth in the future. But for me, I want to start taking you some years back now when I was in grad school. And for those of you who don't know, I was in grad school for classical music. I was training as an oboist. I was getting my master's in oboe performance. That journey itself had been quite a challenging one, between COVID and having a surgery-induced performance injury that almost ended sort of my career before it even began. And, I persisted through that like I had done a lot of my life. And as I was in the last year, and especially in the last semester of being in grad school, I was really questioning and having a lot of doubt as to if I should really be continuing down that path. Those years in grad school and being in that environment in its own way was very traumatizing, for lack of a better term. It was very painful. And it was very painful to be sitting with music, which had been something that had gotten me through most of my life, was now becoming the thing that was harming most of my life. And yes, of course, being in that environment and moving through that, there's a degree of self-responsibility. And so it was not just like, all these things outside of me are horrible and like, but some of my self-responsibility I had to realize in that environment was not so much like, what is wrong about me that I have to change to be okay in this harmful environment. It was actually to be like, no, like I'm not going to be in this anymore, And I was sitting with that, and that was a very heavy thought, decision, what have you. And at the same time, as I had been going through my whole career and all these different layers to becoming a classical musician, I had also come into deep recognition of my own upbringing, my own trauma, my own pain, my own wounding. And I had really intentionally chose to walk a path of healing that. And a lot of my pain and trauma and pieces of my childhood were very much interwoven into relational dynamics and sexuality and things of that assortment. So there was also a very specific choice point that it wasn't just, I've got to do like trauma resolution work, but it's like, I actually have to go into like relational work. I need to like explore sexuality work, because there is a kind of distinction to that. And I was in those spaces, I was doing my work, and it was always just like so beautiful to be in those spaces and to be with other people doing that sort of depth of work and to be learning from other people, but also to have the opportunity to be witnessed, to share my own experience, what I'm learning. And people had always very powerfully reflected to me that I had such a wisdom about all of this. And it was very perplexing to me. But, I took those comments or compliments and was like, oh, okay, well, cool. Love it. Awesome. And so as I was sitting at this precipice of, I think I have to like end this career that honestly hadn't even really started, but I was like, I think I need to pivot this direction. I was like, well, I don't even know how to address that. And I was like, and like, what the fuck am I going to do with myself? And so I would go on these hikes while in that last semester of grad school. And as I was on these hikes, I would just kind of keep asking myself over and over again, like, what am I going to do? What am I being called to? What's the thing I'm here for? And I would sort of meditate on that question. And at the time as well, like I'd been moving through some significant heartbreak and realizing some deeper layers of my own work relationally that needed to be addressed, holding all these things at the same time. And after a few times of doing that sort of practice of like going on a hike and like asking the question and sort of meditating on it as I walked or hiked, I started to have these like pictures and these scenes and this like vision come through. And in that vision, I saw myself living on land, and on that land was other like community. Like it was this piece of land that had various different types of like homes and living situations. There were cabins and like homes that like multiple people lived in, and then homes for like families. There's a retreat center, there's a community center, there's a temple, there's all these pieces. And I saw myself very profoundly in a way, like in that community, being a leader. I saw myself also in a sort of purpose and career sense, for lack of a better term, very much being like the medicine woman of relationships and sex in this like whole community. So it's like everyone would come to me to be able to work through those pieces. Couples would come to me. I was hosting workshops for the community or experiences for the community. I also felt very much that it wasn't just like our community that had access to this. Like people would come and live in this community. They would come and experience my teaching, my work, in a way to like shift that, but also to understand like what is it to be like in community where like relationships and intimacy and sex are something that are deeply foundational to how we function, to how we interact, that are prioritized, that are focused on, that are called forth again. And that was a lot to be like, oh, what? No, that's not for me. Like, I can't do that. No. Oh God, what the fuck is that going to ask of me? But even the deeper layer of like resistance and fear in a way was like, you know, it wasn't, I'm just like a lone island doing this. Like I profoundly like saw the partnership I would have and the family that I would have and the home that we would build. And the ways, again, like we would be in such deep community, but also like the nucleus of this partnership, of this family. And I could see into the work that my partner and I would co-create together for this community. I saw the work that we would do together to alchemize so much of our shit so that we could actually be in some sort of relationship that was beyond anything we ever envisioned was possible. I saw the type of like home that we built. And in that home, this love and this warmth and this coziness that I had never experienced before and didn't even know that I could like hold that kind of energy. And how even just that, even if like my partner and I were just doomed to like fuck up children and to just pass along all kinds of shit to them, which in some ways that's still a thread of truth because you can only heal so much in a lifetime and it takes 7 generations to clear out shit. So, you know, there's only so much we could do. But even if all we could do is give them this beautiful home that had this energetic frequency of like what I felt, I was like, damn, like that could heal all the children in the world. And I could see like the rhythm of our home and how like our home would be filled with ceremony and altars and how we would move through our home with our children, like teaching them how to like be with their emotions and how to regulate themselves and how to be expressive, and that we in the way that our family would interact would be this just depth of expression of just truth and being a yes to all of it and knowing the gift of everything. And I think the part that had always moved me the deepest of that vision was the partnership, because it was so vastly different from anything I had ever seen or witnessed or experienced. The safety in it, the level of truth and the reverence we hold for truth, the depth of our own practice, the commitment and the devotion we have to our own selves, and how we understand that that is the container of our relationship always. And the capacity to feel the loving touch, the safe desire. And especially in ways very deeply identified with the high priestess, and understanding the power of our sexual energy and how that can be alchemical, and also understanding the power of the body and the alchemical nature of our body. The times that I could tap as I'm doing these hikes, I tap into this ceremony that we would do to alchemize so much, but through our bodies, through our sexuality, through touch. And then what that would open in us to then move into this capacity of relating, this depth of intimacy. And what was interesting about tapping into this was just the profound knowing that this had always been true. And so to zoom out again a little, because I can get kind of lost in this. It's I'm just going on these hikes. This is what's coming through. And I'm what the literal fuck? No. Oh God. What? And I resisted it for a while. And there were a lot of reasons I resisted this vision. And there just became a certain threshold where it's being in that grad school environment was so horrific that I genuinely was wishing that God would take me, because I didn't see any other way out, because I'm too stubborn. And that vision filled me with an aliveness and a sense of love and a sense of connection and truth that was just I don't know, even if this never happens, and even if somehow this is wrong, this feels so holy and sacred. And it's there's a reason to at least move towards this. And so I did. And that's why I'm sitting in front of you today, telling you this story. And something I began to understand as I tapped into this vision clarified, the scenes of the vision came through. I really began to understand almost the thresholds. And that's why they're initiatory thresholds. And that's why I sort of encompass it in this temple analogy. This is a path, this is a way of being. And there's sort of these different thresholds that we cross that then allow all these things to interweave. And again, I really began and understood and knew in my soul and in my body and in my heart that it all starts with this inner sacred union, this relationship we have to ourselves. And that is the first initiatory threshold. And then it's when you walk into partnership, for example, having this sense of wholeness, having this sense of knowing how to regulate your body, knowing how to be with your experience, knowing how to alchemize, to all those types of things, to be able to go into the trigger of partnership potentially, and to know how to work and yield that within yourself, but then to be so curious and have capacity to be curious and alchemical with another person. It's if two people had that sort of capacity and then come together, what kind of relationship is that? And there's a component of it that's it's very alchemical, because clearly even if we're these evolved humans and we're I have this level of consciousness and I've done my work and whatever, you're going to come into fucking partnership and shit's going to hit the fan for a moment. You're fuck. And it's you're going to have to alchemize that. but you're going to know how. And the two of you in this co-creation of the third entity are going to know how to like find your own way together through that. And that's going to open up space for like truth to come through, for magic and beauty and love and all kinds of things. And then it's like, if you had a partnership that had that sort of capacity, what kind of family could be grown from that environment? And then it's like, if you have families that are in this like sacred, conscious way of existing, that they value relationship, that there's intentionality to the relationships within the family system, what kind of community grows when those families interact? When, there's groups of men that are interacting, groups of women, the children. What are the initiations as a community we bring children through? What are the ceremonies we hold as a community for the thresholds that happen within adulthood? And it's like, I just started to understand like what I could see in my own vision for myself, what I was being asked to do was in essence this path being revealed, was this medicine being revealed. Because I know that in that beautiful vision I saw of myself and what I was being called to, one, that had to start with me. And I had already started that sort of path of really deeply coming home to myself. And then I got to become like smacked in the face with like, let's go deeper. And then it's like, again, like everything just kind of comes from that and realizing like, yeah, like if I see this beautiful partnership and I can literally feel this man right next to me, I can feel his energy. I can feel him inside of me. I can feel our chemical capacity. I can feel the field that we can build all like, it just, like it all starts from here and it's all from the embodiment. And from seeing this also in this like community sense and seeing like the space I could create and what could be held within that space, what could be moved through that space, what could open in people through that space. It really reinforced this idea that I already had, that I really do think that we're in this threshold of time where we're really being invited back into relationship in this way of like returning to the ancient knowing of relationship. When I read text about like Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, kind of high priestess lineages, different goddesses, some of the like kind of divine unions within the goddesses and the gods and things like that, there is just this thread of energy that's like, that they knew this kind of stuff. Like they were humans and they had their shit, but they also were so deeply connected to their divine magic and power and capacity. And they knew how to wield that. And what they were able to experience and what they were able to sustain on the various levels beyond just the physical, but what they could even just experience in the physical plane. I feel like the world is like coming back to that because we are so far from it. There's like kind of this calling back to that feels really true. And because we're so far from that like real deep knowing, which again, it's a knowing. And so it's not like, I got to go figure it out. I got to go find all these things. I got to do all these things. It's like, we just have to like let the shit melt off and like let it go. Whatever is like not true, whatever we've been conditioned into, whatever we've been handed, like let that go so that we can remember. This path is very much about this constant cycling between remembering and forgetting and knowing that that is sacred as fuck. Like when you forget, it is one inevitable that you will remember, but how holy and profound it can be to forget. And so many of us have been in such a prolonged state of forgetting. And without that, there would not be such a high and strong calling to remember and to come back, is the way that I kind of feel it and sense it. And so it looks like in this world, if you will, like I think everyone can identify to some degree that yes, there's all these ways that the world is connected in ways we never have before. And the world has never experienced such a high level of disconnection and loneliness and a lack of reverence for relationship and intimacy. And also like a lack of knowing and skill in a way of how to create that, let alone how to sustain it. And some of that is because like we're not in that with ourselves. And so it's like our capacity within ourselves warrants our capacity with others. So if we don't have that within ourselves, it's very hard to do it with other people. If we don't have a relationship to ourselves, it's very hard to create relationship with others of all kinds. And so in that way, it looks like, but it's not really, but it's like relationships are like the next edge of human evolution in a way. And I like to think about it as like relationships and partnership, maybe even more specifically, is this next edge of like spiritual evolution as well. We've all gotten so used to this like solo, independent spiritual path. And it's like, yes, of course, like we can go into a space with other people, if you will, and we can all be at the same sound bath, or we could be in the same yoga class, or we could be doing the same embodiment practice, whatever. But we're still kind of like in our own self. And it's like, what's my consciousness being sharpened to? What am I being called? Like, and it's very much, we haven't had the practice or as deeply, or many of us haven't had that practice of like, I come as this like sovereign, I come with this awareness of myself, and then this other person sits across from me. And not only am I holding a field and they're holding a field, but us together creates a field. And there's ways that that field is an overlap of ours, but there's also still a holding of our individual fields. And to kind of play in that world and in that sort of, it's not really technology is not the right word, but for lack of a better term, like to play in the technology of that, that is the next edge of evolution, of spiritual evolution. We've gotten really good at this path. And now like there's this calling to like, how do you lean in? With that knowing, with that holding, with that embodiment? And how do you like lean in a way, but still hold like your knowing and your truth and your desires and all that amongst someone else's, but also holding curiosity to theirs? How do you let go of those things and co-create together? And again, like all of this becomes the field for like what recreates the world of relationships and the systems and of relationship. And so for me, like, that's why this work is so important right now. There's such a deep calling back to it. It's becoming a necessity because we're being called into something different. And the ways that we've been existing won't work anymore. And it's sort of connected to that, I think it's Albert Einstein that's like, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And so it's like, we have to try something different. And so much of our society, as we'll explore a little deeper, is built on individualism, is built on disconnection, is built on the solo journey, is built on this like me, myself, and I. And then you're anchored and you're gripping onto this me, myself, and I. And again, there's an importance to that, of being in relationship to ourselves. But individualism is very different than like self-intimacy. And many of us don't have that self-intimacy. And so it's like when you go into relationship with this grip on yourself and this like unwillingness to lean in, like the amount of pushing away, but still like still recognizing actually like as humans, we need connection and we need relationship, and it's a biological need. It is not because you're unhealed. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's a genuine need. But we've sort of been conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with that. And so as we get called into recreating the world as it is right now, because what's happening right now isn't working anymore. The piece of the foundation that I feel very called to bring is intimacy, is relationship. To call that back. And so my hope as this podcast continues to unfold, as you continue to listen, as you continue to engage in this space, I hope that it really calls you back to yourself. And not like, again, in this individualistic, I'm self-centered kind of thing, but in this like deep, profound, like I'm connected to myself. I'm intimate with myself. I am so fucking grateful that I get to be so aware of what's going on in my own body, my own system. And I'm in relationship to those parts, to those emotions, to the just ever-flowing bit of sensation that's moving through me. And I also hope that in connecting to that, you get to become a lot clearer about what kind of intimacy, like what kind of relational and sexual experiences, moments, capacity do you want to experience? Do you want to cultivate in this lifetime? What is like your calling of that? What is the intimacy that you were called for in this lifetime? And then how, like inviting you to step into that, inviting you to step into the different initiatory thresholds. Because again, for example, some of you can come here and have never heard, like never have thought of the idea of like being in relationship to yourself, and that's mind-blowing and profound, and you're like, holy fuck, like that's what I need. And you like meet that initiation, you enter that, you cross that threshold, and you're like, it's hard as fuck and I'm here for it. There's some of you that are like, I got that down, but this whole partnership thing is like, what the fuck? And you meet that. And again, like you can be in this beautiful partnership and you're like, you know what? Like in this partnership, we are deeply called to create family. And it's like, what kind of family do you want to create? And again, all this feeds into like community as well. And so it's like helping you hear and know your own path. That is like your unique experience of intimacy in this lifetime, and offering you the capacity to be attuned to that, to know how to work with that, so that it's not just, oh, that sounds nice, or like, I intellectually understand how to be a better partner. But it's like you are embodying that. You are living as that. You are walking as that. And it's not like only when I enter into this space, only when I am in my practice am I this. It's every single moment, which means when you meet a person on the street who pisses you the fuck off, it's like that is an invitation to bring this intimacy you feel called to in this life. When your partner hurts you, again, what does that look like? And when you have these beautiful children that you have created with an incredible partner, and they just like offer you such deep love, it's also like, how do you so deeply receive that instead of pushing it away? It's all of it. All of it to be embodied in intimacy and to be walking as it, in a way of reminding the world and calling the world back to that ancient remembering of relating, that ancient way of intimacy. And each one of us is called to call that forth and remember that in such distinct ways. And so it's also very important for me from the get-go to say, like, you are the beholder of you, like you are the all-knowing of you. I offer invitations, I offer ideas, I offer my own experience. And really what I see that as is like, I'm offering you pebbles that help you build your path. And you get to have the discernment and the internal listening to be like, Ashley offered this pebble today. What do I think of that? How does that feel in my body? Even like, what's maybe like one speck of this pebble that I'd like to take versus the whole pebble? Maybe you take a bunch of the pebbles. You're like, yes, I need more of these. You are the one who knows. And it's a opportunity to help you find those like little pebbles to build your path and to help you listen to yourself, because I'm not all knowing. I'm just here to offer what I've learned and what I see and what I feel. And everything in that way is an invitation for you to try on and see what if it is true for you. And you may have just listened to me speak and been like, I don't agree with anything she's just said. Awesome. I love that. Thank you. And if something feels really deep in it that calls you, like trust that. Even if you don't know what it is, even if you don't know what it looks like, even if it makes no absolute positive sense, because really nothing right now is supposed to make sense. And we have the capacity to be with that. This is the first episode of this binge series, Coming Home to Intimacy. And so what we're really going to be doing through the rest of these episodes is exploring, first and foremost, like, where is the world right now with intimacy, with relationships, with sex? What is like the status? Where are we? And understanding how where we are kind of points to like, how have we forgotten this path? How have we forgotten this innate ability to relate to one another? this innate ability to love and be connected. And then we're going to explore what really is the path of sacred intimacy and what are the different components of it, and really helping you start to feel into if this path calls to me, if there's something about that feels true for me, where might I start? Where is my threshold to cross first? And getting clear on that, and even starting to be able to percolate and get clear on if coming home to myself is my threshold, or if reclaiming my eros is my threshold. What particularly in that is my first step in that? And that is what we're going to be diving deeper into through the rest of this series, and also just in the broad stroke of this podcast. I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude for you, for coming here and listening, for being present, for being curious and open. And I also want to express my gratitude and appreciation for your discernment, for you to be able to hear yourself, to hear your body's way of revealing to you what is true and what is not for you. And for whatever is true, I appreciate you really holding those pieces. As we're coming to an end of this first episode, if something in this episode stirred this readiness in you, I want to tell you about the next intimate step session. The next intimate step session is a 75-minute one-on-one session designed to help you experience one shift that will transform your intimate life while initiating your unique path to deeper intimacy. In this session, we will together transform one of your intimacy challenges through body-based inquiry and an embodiment process. And as part of the launch special, I am offering these sessions for just $60. They're normally $150, so it is an incredible deal. And I'm also only making 16 sessions like this available. So once they're gone, they're gone. The sessions with this first episode launching are now open, and the offer will close either when all the sessions have been sold out or on Sunday, April 19th at 11:59 p.m. So if you're feeling called, do not wait. Claim your session today. You can find the link to claim your session in the show notes below. And again, I just want to thank you so much for joining me for this first episode. It's been such a pleasure to be in space with you, to be in the temple with you, and I'm just sending you so much love. Thank you for walking the path with me today. If you're feeling called to go deeper, everything you need is at thesacredintimacytemple.com. Join the community there to stay connected and be the first to know about new episodes, offerings, and what's coming up inside the temple next. And if this episode moves something within you, share it with a friend who's ready. I'll see you in the next episode. Come home to the temple within.